Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Following a last-minute announcement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy comes to Washington to meet with President Biden. NTD's Iris Tao has more on what's announced.
Clad in his trademark sweatshirt and cargo pants, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy came to the White House on a surprise visit. It's the first time he's left his country since Russia's invasion 300 days ago.
It's an honor to be by your side.
All my appreciations from my heart, from the hearts of Ukrainians.
Meeting President Biden in the Oval Office, Zelenskyy thanked him for the billions of dollars in aid. He also thanked Americans whose tax money funded that.
Thanks from our just ordinary people to your ordinary people.
The visit comes as the administration announced today another $1.8 billion in military aid to Ukraine. And for the first time, the U.S. sending Kyiv a Patriot air defense system, marking a major escalation in U.S. support.
We're going to continue to strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend itself, particularly air defense.
Russia, meanwhile, has already warned that sending a missile defense system as advanced as the Patriot will be deemed a major provocation. But the White House says while Biden wants to be robust in his support, he's not seeking a direct war with Russia. And today at a joint presser after the two met, Biden and Zelenskyy said,
"What you're doing, what you've achieved, it matters not just to Ukraine, but to the entire world.
We really fight for our common victory against this tyranny, and we will win."
While Biden's vowing continued support, a Wall Street Journal polling finds Republican voters increasingly skeptical of aid to Ukraine. And House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy has said his party will not write a blank check for the country. Some other Republicans have been calling to audit the tens of billions in aid already sent.
With the money we've sent to Ukraine, we could have already secured our border, but we're not doing that.
And we're sending American taxpayer money over there with no oversight.
Meanwhile, Congress is currently considering a funding package that includes another $45 billion in fresh aid to Ukraine. Lawmakers are racing to pass it by Friday, though some Republicans are trying to block it. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Today was supposed to mark the end of Border Rule Title 42. Now it's in limbo after the Supreme Court has stepped in. The White House aims to scrap this temporary rule next week, and now senators on Capitol Hill calling for bipartisan solutions to quell an expected surge at the southern border. NTD's Melina Wisecup joins us to break it down.
So Title 42, since it's been enacted, it has allowed Border Patrol agents to return roughly 30% of all illegal crossers back to Mexico. But this policy has always been a temporary one. And once it ends, most migrants will be processed under Title 8. Now, Title 8 is a U.S. law that technically requires illegal immigrants to be detained until their immigration proceedings have finished. But the Biden administration has been releasing the majority of migrants into the country under a humanitarian parole provision, which has allowed them to obtain work permits immediately. This has led to some Republicans on Capitol Hill accusing the administration of incentivizing illegal immigration. Here's some of those comments from today.
This was not happening under the Obama administration. It is happening under this administration. The law is the same. The difference is this administration is not enforcing the law.
This comes as border communities are already preparing for the worst. For example, in Texas, they sent National Guard troops to construct razor wire fences to prevent the expected flow of illegal immigrants from crossing there. And in the Yuma sector in Arizona, which is the sector that has the highest number of in-custody migrants, is now having to release those illegal immigrants into their streets because the surrounding sectors are expected to quickly reach full capacity. Yuma's mayor actually wrote us in an email saying that he recently met with the White House where he was told that his community would not be reimbursed for the costs they've already spent for transportation, food, and housing these illegal immigrants. Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema highlighted this issue in a fiery Senate floor speech. Here's a look.
The city of Tucson has already accepted over 15% of its total population just in migrant releases since April of this year.
Melina, we know there's been a number of bipartisan bills trying to address the border, and both parties talk about the need for finding solutions and common ground on this issue. What's stalling this effort?
The reason why we're still seeing this gridlock is mainly because it's a blame game between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans say they don't want, some of them say they don't want to engage in any conversation around immigration if it includes amnesty. So we heard that specifically today from Senator Kennedy. And then you have Democrats on the other side who are saying, they want a complete pathway to citizenship or without, and they won't talk about border security without getting that. But we did hear something very interesting from those Senate Republicans today. That is a lack of conversation in general. So Senator Langford said that they have been working repeatedly to get hearings, bipartisan hearings, to address the immigration issue, to address it on a deeper level. And they said they haven't been successful in getting those hearings on the calendar or, in schedule. So, but these senators are saying they're hopeful that when the Republicans take back the majority in the House next Congress, there will be more bipartisan discussion around this issue. Steve, back to you.
And Congress is one step closer to banning TikTok on government devices. This could deal a major blow to the company's revenue. The Senate included the ban in the massive government funding bill, making it very likely to pass later this week and become law. The Chinese social media app has around 130 million users in the United States. The proposed ban would not impact many users, but it could deal a blow to the company's reputation and scare off valuable advertisers. The House is expected to vote on the government funding bill later this week. Both House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy have shown support for the proposed TikTok ban. And the House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy is turning up the volume in his opposition to the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill, attending a Senate GOP luncheon where he made his case against the bill. But where is some of this money actually going? Justin Goodman is a senior vice president at the White Coat Waste Project, and we're happy to have him on to discuss. Justin Goodman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Justin, this omnibus bill is garnering a lot of attention. Your team has been digging into the details with concerns over where a lot of this American taxpayer money is going, specifically when it comes to China. And you've actually had some success in removing some of this funding. If you could, tell us what you've discovered.
Back in April 2020, we were the first organization to expose how funding from the National Institutes of Health and other U.S. agencies was being funneled to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for these dangerous gain-of-function experiments on bat coronaviruses that most people believe, most Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike believe caused the COVID pandemic. We have now been working with Congress for almost 3 years to cut funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology and for other organizations, laboratories in China that are run by the CCP. We have had some success cutting off some of the grants, but unfortunately, the Wuhan Institute of Virology has remained eligible for more taxpayer funding, despite being presumably being the culprit of this pandemic that's caused close to 7 million people. So we've been working to defund the Wuhan Institute of Virology and have actually put together a diverse coalition of organizations, Taxpayers Protection Alliance, Freedom Works, American Conservative Union, People for Liberty, Free the People, and Advancing Law for Animals just sent a letter to congressional leadership calling on them to cut funding for Wuhan Institute of Virology and the 30 plus other laboratories located in Russia and China that are still authorized to receive taxpayer funding, despite them being foreign adversaries that don't have our best interests in mind.
This is honestly just a little bit unfathomable to me. So you're saying it's true that 3 years out from the pandemic, American taxpayer funds are still being sent to the Wuhan Institute of Virology?
So the Wuhan Institute of Virology is still eligible to receive taxpayer funds from the NIH and other agencies. Just finally, a couple months ago, the NIH officially ended the grant that was funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So until recently, they were essentially actively involved in NIH grants. The organization, the U.S. organization that was funneling the money to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, EcoHealth Alliance, and lied to Congress about it, has obstructed investigations into COVID origins, repeatedly broken the law, has received tens of millions of dollars in additional funding since the pandemic began, despite its role, again, in potentially causing and covering up the origins of the pandemic. Now, thankfully, the omnibus that is being considered by Congress right now does include language that prevents certain funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology and certain funding for EcoHealth's work in China. So Congress, thankfully, is beginning to crack down on funding for dangerous animal experiments in China. However, there are loopholes that still allow taxpayer funding to flow there pretty freely.
Now, just out of curiosity, in your efforts to reach out to Congress, has this been bipartisan in terms of showing interest in what you have to say?
It's been imbalanced, but it has been bipartisan. And we were very thankful in this year's NIH funding bill earlier this year. We were able to get bipartisan cooperation to include a measure that would cut funding for all labs in foreign adversary nations like China and Russia. However, that particular language, that full ban on funding for these foreign labs, did not make it into the omnibus, but a version of that cuts off some funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology specifically was included. So we are pleased that this is being addressed by Congress, and they are starting to hold these agencies and these rogue organizations accountable, but more needs to be done, and we really need to see some bipartisan cooperation to make sure taxpayers aren't funding animal laboratories that can cause pandemics and kill millions of people.
Justin Goodman, really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.